What is up, guys? It is Higgins in Japan, and this is part 2 of a 2-part video. So if you haven't seen the first part of the video, I'll put a link in the description below. Watch that first. It's not like you really have to, but just answering questions that people sent me on my Facebook page. And where is that located? You're asking? Facebook.com/Higgins in Japan. That's where you can send me questions about anything. I mean, I live in Japan, so you might want to keep them like Japan related, but I mean, whatever. You do what you gotta do. So this time we're going to be answering a couple more questions from people that left me questions. And so here we go. Matthew Pape. I was gonna save his question for last, but whatever. Anyways, he asks, visa and work permit processing time, just so people won't think they will get a job next week. That's not a question. But anyways, no, I get what he's saying. He's asking. He's asking about how long it takes to get a visa and a work permit and the processing time. How long does that take? It takes a long time. It takes weeks and weeks, and it takes lots of, you killing trees to make paper, to fill out forms to send to, consulates. No, but seriously, it takes a long time. Now, when I first got here, or like when I first applied for all my stuff, like I worked for a dispatch company, and so they handle a lot of that stuff, kind of. Like, I'm not saying that they do all the work for you. You certainly still have to fill out a lot of the paperwork, but they at least make sure you have the paperwork. Now, dispatch companies vary, and, if you get a job for a dispatch company, they may or may not help you out, but yeah, like, they helped me out. They made sure, like, they were like, you need to fill out these forms, you need to sign this, you need to send it here. Like, they were very helpful in that respect to making sure that I got my visa. And my visa, I think, came, I want to say like a couple days before I had to leave. Like, it was one of those things where I was just like, this is not going to come, this is not going to come. And, it obviously did. But yeah, so yeah, that's one of the benefits of working for a dispatch company. They do help you out, make sure that you get, all your paperwork sorted out and stuff like that. But yeah, it does take a long time. Now, when you renew your visa, it takes a little bit of time to get a new visa and everything, but it's a real simple process. So more than likely, you'll have a 1-year instructor visa if you're coming over here to teach. And so once a year, you'll have to go to immigration. You'll have a form that you have to fill out stating, it's almost like if you were going to do a background check. Like, where have you worked? Like, where are the last places that you worked? Where do you currently work? Where do you... And again, working for a dispatch company, they... they send you those papers and say, here's what you need to fill out, here's what you need to take with you. So again, it's really helpful. Basically, you just show up to immigration, you wait in line, hopefully it's not too long, give them your paperwork, then they will, if you're renewing, they will stamp the back of your visa saying that it's being renewed, and then they will, send you on your way. Now, you'll then wait a couple of weeks. Hopefully, it's not much longer than that. I had to wait a longer time. Long story, won't go into it. But I had to wait a longer time. Usually, it's a couple of weeks. They send you a postcard in the mail that says, hey, pick it up before this date. You show up, you pay them, you get a new card. It's real simple. The going back in the second day is literally just walking in, saying, hey, I'm here. They're like, go sit down. Here's your new card. You're done. So the picking up process is really easy. So yeah, I mean, it does take quite a bit of time to get your visa and stuff. So if you are planning to come to Japan, or you want to come to Japan, don't wait till the last minute to apply for a job. Like, start applying as soon as you can, so that way you can get all that stuff, because it does take quite a bit to get the initial paperwork done. All right, question number 2. This one will take a little bit of time just because there's multiple questions in here. Rufus, thank you for your question. And honestly, Rufus, dude, has been following me on YouTube and Facebook since like day one. So major props. Thank you very much. He says, I don't know if you've done this before in a video, but I'd like to know why you chose to go to Japan in the first place, and what are your favorite things about Japan? There's more questions. We'll cover them all. Don't worry. So why did I choose to come to Japan? Now, I have talked about this in video before, but whatever. I can talk about it again. I love talking about Japan. When I was about 10 years old-ish, my parents got a wok, which is a Chinese cooking dish. Like, obviously, it's not Japanese. But it did come with a few sets of chopsticks. And I was really interested in, like, what these sticks were. Like, what is this? How, like, people eat with this? Like, this is weird. Like, as a 10-year-old kid, like, that doesn't know anything, like, I thought that was weird. So I was pretty determined to, like, teach myself how to eat with them. And I did. And obviously it's paid off. But, yeah. My interest with Japan kind of starts like everybody else's. It's like, oh, I'm interested in anime, or I'm interested in Japanese video games or movies or whatever. But for me, like, it didn't stop there. Like, it wasn't just, oh, I'm only interested in those things. It was like, what else is there about Japan? History and culture and traditions and all that kind of stuff was very interesting to me as well, because I grew up in Texas, and so obviously Japan is a very different culture from Texas, very different culture from America, very different culture from anywhere, really. And so I was just fascinated that there was like a whole nother culture out there that was completely different than what I knew. And so that went on for a few years, like the interest of Japan. It wasn't until I was 18, I graduated high school, and the church I was going to at the time was having a trip to Japan, and they were like, we can, like, if you want to go, like, we can hook you up, like, let's do this. So I was like, yes, like, definitely, yes, I want to do this. Because, again, growing up in Texas was, you're like, oh, I'm never going to actually move to Japan. Like, it's one of those things where you just kind of have the idea of something you want to do, but, you know, you're just kind of like, I'm never going to move to Japan. But, yeah, so, like, I moved around in the States a couple of times, ended up at this church. They were like, we're going to Japan. I was like, yes, I'll go to Japan. Like, that would be awesome. Came here after high school for about 2 weeks and just loved it. Like, loved everything about Japan. And like a lot of times that happens with people, you know, they come to Japan and it's the honeymoon phase, you know, where you're like, oh, this is great, and then like a couple months later, you're just like, I can't do this, I can't do Japan, I got to get back home. So part of me was kind of like, well, maybe that's all that was. Like, you know, it was a good trip, like, had a lot of fun and a lot of good memories and that kind of thing. And so, you know, I wasted some time, didn't go to college right away, worked, and then finally went to college. And then 8 years later, while I was in college, I had the opportunity to come back. And so I took the opportunity, was like, all right, like, let's do it. Like, I have, you can ask the people that I used to work with and, you know, people that I'm friends with that know me, and like, I talked about Japan a lot, like an annoying amount, I'm sure. So I apologize for that, but I live in Japan. No. But yeah, so yeah, I had the opportunity to come back, and like 8 years later, and I thought, like, is this going to be the same reaction? Like, am I going to feel the same way about Japan that I did 8 years ago? This is going to kind of be the test to see, you know, if this is what I really want to do. Because you have the interest, you go back again, and this time things are different, or things just don't click the same way they did before. And I would say about 2-3 days into the trip, I was like, nope, like, this thing is legit. Like, this wasn't just like a one-time, oh, Japan's really cool, but I'm just going to stay back and admire it from a distance. This was legit, like, okay, no, I need to be in Japan on a full-time or a regular basis. So I got back that summer and started changing a lot of things, changed my major. That was pretty much all I changed. Changed my major and focused more on teaching English to foreigners. And yeah, so that was my main focus. Like, after coming back, was like, I really need to do everything that I can to graduate as soon as possible so I can get a job, so I can move to Japan. And so, yeah, that's how and why I got here and chose, like, I don't know, it was never really, I've never really had an interest in living in any other country other than Japan. Like, I've been to Mexico, which I loved Mexico. I was in Mexico in probably 2003. Mexico was amazing. But, like, there weren't any other countries that people would mention, oh, you could go teach here, and I was like, but it's not Japan. Like, I would always go back to, like, oh, but it's not Japan. And so, yeah, so I never really had a real interest in going to work in or live in another country. So one of my favorite things about Japan, I would say, there's a lot of convenient things in Japan. Like, I live really near a bunch of restaurants that I can walk to. I live near the station. Like, the train station is like maybe 3 minutes away. Grocery stores are really close. Like, when I first moved here, I didn't even have a car, but I was able to walk to my school. I was able to walk to the grocery store and the post office and convenience stores, like, without a problem. Like, you can get out in some, like, crazy backwoods areas of Japan where there's nothing, but, like, the places that I've lived, everything's really convenient and it's great. Favorite things, the people of Japan, like, you run into a lot of different people, and I would say most of them are nice. Like, you're not going to get treated too terribly. How good is your Japanese, and how essential is it to getting by in Japan? You can get by with 0 Japanese knowledge in Japan. I wouldn't recommend it. But honestly, I came here in 2012 with, like, 0 knowledge of Japanese language. I knew some essentials, and I studied a little, or practiced up, had one of those books that I bought at Barnes & Noble, before I moved here. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, my Japanese is not good now, but it's a lot better than what it was when I first got here. You can get by without it. Things that you won't be able to do very well, carry on conversations with people, like, have meaningful relationships with people if you don't speak any Japanese. I would say also the trains, the train station itself, the signboard that has the names of the stations that it's going to might not have English on it. It might, depending on where you're at. If you live closer to Tokyo, you're going to have an easier time not knowing Japanese because there's a lot more people. There's a higher concentration of foreigners there, and so there's a higher concentration of people that are around people that speak English. So you'll find that you can probably get by a lot easier. Maybe that's why people love Tokyo so much, is because they're like, well, I don't have to know any Japanese, so I'll just live there. But yeah, my Japanese has gotten better. If I studied a lot more than what I do, then it would be a lot better than what it is. And lastly, how hard is it to find housing over in Japan? It's, depending on a couple factors, it can be really easy. Like I said, when I first got here, my apartment was already, like, ready for me. The dispatch company I worked for, they set all of that stuff up. I literally walked into the real estate agency, signed the paper for the contract for the apartment, and moved in. Didn't have to do anything. Didn't have to look for the apartment. Didn't have to, nothing. Just moved in. When I moved to this place, I knew that I didn't want to live in a Leo Palace. They tend to be furnished, but they also tend to be a little bit smaller. And I have stuff. I had a refrigerator right there, a coffee maker, like, stuff that wasn't going to fit into a Leo Palace because they provide a lot of things for you. So I found this place on my own. Luckily, I had a lot of people, well, not a lot. I had a couple people that were very helpful and, took time out of their day to go to real estate agencies with me, to call places to make sure I wasn't getting, moving into some burnout building, or making sure I wasn't going to get ripped off, and helping me move. Like, I, already had people here that were willing to do those things, and super grateful for that because like my Japanese is okay, but like trying to, you know, get an apartment, like that's just something that's not I'm not going to be any good at. So I needed people's help. And so yeah, luckily I had help. I mean, there's a million websites that you can find, you know, apartments on, and that's what I did. Just found it just had to, like, I wanted to find a place that wasn't too far away from my schools and wasn't too far away from civilization, that kind of stuff. And once I figured out what my schools were going to be, or where my school was going to be, like, then I was like, okay, here's the apartment I want to look at. Let's look at it. Okay, it's not a burnout building. Okay, let's move in. So, I mean, that's pretty much the method that I used, and it seemed to work. But like I said, when I first got here, I didn't have to do anything. And depending on what dispatch company you work with, if you work with one of the bigger ones, they can be a lot more accommodating. They'll probably just throw you into Leo Palace because it's easy for them. And if you don't have anything, like if you're just moving to Japan, Leo Palace is fine. I just had been here for 3 years and had 3 years worth of crap that I had to get rid of or move, and so I wanted a smaller or a bigger place, and Leo Palace wasn't going to fit. So, all right, this video is super long, and hopefully it will all fit onto the YouTubes. But if you guys have stuck around for this long, I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the questions. If you have more questions about me or about Japan or about whatever, leave it in the comment section below. Or you can head over to facebook.com/Higgins in Japan. Leave me questions, comments, all that kind of stupid stuff there. So I'm going to go. I'm going to make dinner because it's later than what I would normally eat dinner, but whatever. I'm going to eat dinner. Have a good one, guys. Peace.